Welcome to the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Gissal. I am a human design and relationship coach, 6'2", manifesting generator, and total lover of life. If you want real solutions to real life problems, then you are in the right place. This podcast is dedicated to using human design, ancient teachings, and DNA activation to elevate both your relationship with yourself and the people around you. If you are willing to take action on the practical steps given in this podcast, I promise your life will change for the better. All you have to do is open your heart and mind, step beyond your fear, and activate the courage needed to create a life that you're excited to live. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, welcome back to the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. I am excited to talk to you today about this concept that there is actually 3 people in every relationship. So let's get into relationships a little bit. Let's have a little bit of an understanding of this dynamic. What are the 3 people? A lot of people don't understand that there's actually 3 different people or energies within every relationship, and that's regardless of the relationship type. So if this is your significant other, if this is, your kids, if this is a business partner, people at work, like whatever it looks like, it's in every relationship, regardless of the type of relationship. You've got 2 individuals. And then you have this 1/3 entity that is created when these 2 individual energies come together. So when you're within close proximity of one another, it creates like this 3rd person. So I always laugh whenever I'm working with couples or different things. I always like put a name to it. It's like when they used to call like Brangelina, or like I call Andrew and I like Standrew, right? Doesn't have quite the same effect, but it's just kind of funny because it's true. You've got like, we have in my relationship, I have Stacy and I have Andrew, but then we have Standrew, which is who we create, the energy that we create when we are in close proximity to one another. It isn't, what's the word I'm looking for here? I blanked out. So we're just gonna leave that. Oh, I was gonna say that it is like you wouldn't have some of these things if you guys weren't together in close proximity. And so it's a really cool thing to look at. Now, this is important because it's important to understand, because it makes a lot of sense why some relationship dynamics might seem easier than others. And when we can understand that it helps us understand what we're designed to learn from the people around us, what we're designed to teach the people around us, and understand the collective energy that we have and the potential that we have to put this thing out into the world when we're together, that we wouldn't necessarily have just as individuals. And that's a really cool thing to understand within your relationships. And I've seen this play out in a lot of different relationships. Obviously, it's fascinating with your significant other. It's fascinating when you look at it within your family relationships, but it's also really, really powerful when you think about the energy that you bring as a collective. Let's say if you have a partner in business. So when my husband and his business partner, and he had 2 business partners actually, when they started their business, I went ahead and I looked at all of their individual human design charts, but then I also looked at the connections that they made together. And there's some really fascinating things that start to come through that you don't realize. And like for one of them, if 2 of them were together, they like radiated this essence of trust that they wouldn't necessarily have access to if they weren't together. And so for them, it was really important to understand this information and know this, because when they went into a sales call or they showed up to anything that they're like having a new sales thing, they're talking to a client, when they were together, there's almost like immediately this essence of trust that is radiated to the people around them. And so that's a really powerful dynamic. That's something you want to know so that you can utilize that to the betterment of yourself as well as the people around you. So it's really fun to have an understanding of these different dynamics. So this is cool. Now, there's one big mistake that I see people make all the time within their relationships. So before I tell you that, If you are somewhere where you can close your eyes or you can stop and close your eyes, then I want you to do that. If you are driving or walking or whatever that looks like, please do not close your eyes. Okay. But that's okay. You can still do it. Just follow along with your eyes open. I want you to pause for a second. And I want you to think of the most important person in your life. Allow a visualization of them to come forward. If you have your eyes open, just go ahead and say their name out loud. And once you have that person, I want you to now visualize the second most important person in your life. And don't try to think your way through this. Just whoever pops up first you can trust that, okay? And then once you have that one, I want you to go ahead and visualize or say out loud the name of the third most important person in your life. Okay, keeping all three people in your mind. Did you make the list? Were you one of the three most important people in your life? And if you made the list, kudos to you, first of all, because I will tell you the first time that I did this, I did not make the list. And it was really eye-opening for me. I didn't make the list. And so if you did make the list, where were you on the list? Were you first? Were you second? Were you third? Now, this is an important exercise. And the reason that I took you through this is because if you were not on the list, you're not alone, because so many people just don't think that they're that important. And they have spent their entire life putting everyone else ahead of them. And they think that everybody else is more important than them. And it just couldn't be further from the truth. And I took you through that because there is a reason. Because this is one thing I see in relationships so often, is that so many people are trying to focus on understanding the other person or understanding their collective energy before they truly take the time to understand themselves. I see this a lot in marriages. I see this a lot in kids. I see this a lot in, parent to kid relationships. You are always like, well, if I could just understand them better, or if I could just understand the dynamics in our relationship better, then all would be well. And that's a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the main piece of the puzzle, because before you get there, you can't control any of the other person's behavior patterns. You can't control their habitual thinking, their thought processes, how they got to where they got, like any of those things. So you need to focus on you first. And so you see this a lot in marriages. People end up going to counseling. They go to couples counseling. They go and they do this as a couple, but they haven't actually taken the time to get to know themselves first. So they end up putting the cart before the horse, so to say. And it's not that can't work. It's just going to be so much more difficult and probably really painful. And unfortunately, a lot of times it won't work. It's not going to end happily, but not because they don't love each other, not because they don't want it to work, but because they don't really love themselves. And that has bled into their relationship. And now they're trying to solve an internal problem with an external solution, right? So the relationship is the culmination of the two individuals. Therefore, the health of the relationship is actually a symptom, not the cause. It's the symptom. It's the surface level problem of a deeper issue. And that deeper issue is within the two individuals that make up the relationship. So in all of my studies, and I've studied some Tantra, I've studied some different things. And when I was studying Tantra with a mentor of mine, Tantra is essentially, it's coming back to the wholeness within ourselves. We have these two energies at play. We've got this masculine and feminine energy, and it's about coming back to like the wholeness of ourselves. So Tantra at its core is about coming back to the truth of who we are. It's about seeing ourselves as a whole being that doesn't need necessarily anybody else to help us feel whole. It's we feel that wholeness within us. Okay. And so in that essence, what Tantra really is it's like, and we can take this into relationships, into sexuality, into intimacy, whatever that is when two whole people, two individuals that know who they are strong in who they are. They feel whole. They don't feel desperate. They don't feel needy. They don't feel like they have to have somebody else. When those two types of people come together, there is something so incredibly beautiful that can come from this relationship. I mean, it is like everything becomes like a more of a spiritual experience. This is what I would consider like a sacred partnership, where it's like, I don't need you and you don't need me, but man, when we come together, holy shit, watch out. Like sexually, intimately, like conversationally, emotionally, mentally, like just these beautiful things can happen, and it can take us to, it can actually elevate our growth and our evolution even further than we could do on our own. It takes us to a whole nother level when we come together in these relationships as two whole beings. But for most people, that's not how it works. Because for most people, it's two needy people coming together, trying to get something from one another. And that creates a very different relationship dynamic that is oftentimes more destructive than anything else. And it is no joke how you get to this point, how you move through that. But you can't go into a relationship expecting that somebody else is going to fix all your problems for you. You can't go into a relationship or be in a relationship blaming the other person for the way that you are or the way that the relationship is. You can't, that's not it. It's about taking personal responsibility for you, coming back to whole within yourself, the other person choosing to do the same thing, and then you coming together and those energies colliding to create something even more magnificent than you could even imagine. That is built from a place of personal power, not a place of desperation. Very different. Very different. So how do we start to work through this? So in our process, at least at Evolve Beyond Limits, it's simple. It's just not easy, because how we utilize human design for this is that first you need to focus on you, understanding when you are in alignment, when you're out of alignment, what your unique design is, how you're meant to function. You need to start to challenge your own thought patterns, your behavior patterns, the habitual things that you're doing over and over, your reactions to things, understanding your triggers, understanding what, like all these different dynamics, and starting to make the necessary shifts to create more harmony within yourself, to come back to whole within yourself. That is step one. And it has to be, because you have to be the most important person in your life, or else everybody else is suffering. And you can try to tell me otherwise, but if you are not 100% for you, then you are not 100% for anybody else. Okay. So then we can start to understand the dynamics that play with the other person. So you start to see them through a completely different lens. You start to see their gifts, their challenges, how they're designed to communicate. We can start to see them from a very different perspective. And I'm not kidding. When I began this work, some of the things that used to drive me crazy about Andrew, my husband, if you guys don't know, is actually some of his biggest gift. Until I could see that through the lens of human design, I would just get really annoyed by these behaviors and different things instead of seeing them for what they really are, which was something that he could actually teach me and that I could learn to become a better version of myself and become a more whole being myself. And so I was missing out on that because I couldn't see it. And because these things are things that are so not necessarily the norm for me, or I've been conditioned to believe other things or act in different ways, that I just thought they were annoying behaviors, but actually they were someplace that they were things that I could learn from him. He could teach me, and I could become a better version of myself if I would just take a step back and listen. So it's then, and only then, can we start to work on and understand this third entity that's created when the two individuals come together. So two individuals, you got to start with your own work, right? One person is doing it. And one person, I'm telling you right now, there's always going to be one person that has to have the courage to go first. One person has to lead. And so many times I hear this is another issue that I see in relationships, is well, I'll do it if they do it. And so essentially you're blaming the other person, or you're utilizing the other person. We're going to call it out for what it is. You're utilizing the other person as an excuse to not do the work. But it's easier to blame them than to look at yourself and say, I'm too afraid to do this, or I'm not going to do this. And so I see this a lot. It's like, well, once they start to treat me this way, then I'll treat them this way. Well, somebody's got to go first. And it's going to be the person who has the most courage. And you can either look at that as a burden, or you can look at it for what it is, which is truly a blessing. Be a leader, lead, walk your talk, do the things. Not because you want something from the other person, but because you want to be the best version of yourself. Because that's who you want to show up as in a relationship, not because you think that that's who they want you to be, or because that's who you want them to be. It can't be about them. It needs to be about you. So you've got these two individuals that are doing their own work in their own ways and different things. You see yourself through this lens, and you're like, okay, I can understand myself. Then you start to bring this other person in. You're like, okay, I can honor and appreciate who they are without needing to like change them. I can really see the things that they bring. And then we start to look at this collective energy. And it's fun because when I do connection charts for couples, it's there's these 4 different types of channels amongst other characteristics about this third entity that will show up for people. So for example, you can have different splits, which means that some center, it depends how many centers when your charts are put together, how many centers are open compared to how many centers are defined. And like my husband and I, for example, Andrew and I, and a lot of people, they have a 9-0 split, which means that all the centers are actually defined when you're together. And so this can actually cause a tension between people. And if you're too close to one another, it's almost like you feel like you're trapped. You feel like energetically, like you can't get out of something. And so a lot of times, Andrew and I sometimes will have some of our best conversations on the phone, or we'll have some of our best conversations when we're sitting on opposite ends of a big couch, or we're out in public, because we need something to break that tension. We need space from one another to break that tension, or else our energies are intermingling so much that it feels like you're not sure who's who and what's happening. Okay, so like that's one example. Another example would be like your open centers versus your defined centers, or your undefined versus defined centers. So how you react to a stressful situation individually might be very different than how you react as a couple, depending on if you're undefined as an individual, but as a couple, you guys come together and you actually could handle stress significantly better when you're with one another. So that's kind of, fun. So there's different things when it comes to the centers and how those react. And then there's these different channels within a connection chart. So there's the companionship channel. So these channels, these are like the best friend channels. This is when you feel like it's when you guys hold the same human design channel. And so you just feel like somebody just gets you. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, it seems so like this particular essence of who you are feels very natural and very easy, so to say. And then you have your dominance channels. So your dominance channels are where one person has the full channel and the other person doesn't. Okay. And this is important to understand because this is where you guys can really learn from one another. Is when somebody has the channel and the other person doesn't, it is an opportunity to learn from that person and adapt some of the in alignment behaviors from that channel. Okay. Then you have your electromagnetic channels. So the electromagnetic channels are really fun because it's one person has one gate of the channel and the other person has the other one, and they connect. So individually, you don't have this trait, but together you guys you create a whole new channel together. And that's really fun because it's almost like this, like that's where like this almost third personality comes from, where you may be able to do things together that you would struggle to do by yourself, or whatever that looks like. And these are often the things that actually bring people together in the beginning. It brings people together in the beginning of a relationship, but then it starts to drive you crazy later on. So it can cause some tension if you don't realize this. And you don't know what it means. Like if you don't understand what it means to be in alignment in that channel and out of alignment in that channel, then you're going to struggle to utilize it to its fullest capacity and actually see the beauty of it. And then last, there is the compromise channels. So this is, and you can just ignore, all the things, all the technicalities of this, but it's essentially one person has the full channel. The other person has one of the two gates in the channel. So when you're together, the person who has the one gate, they get access to the full channel. And so this actually is one of the dynamics that causes a lot of tension in relationships because one person is constantly radiating out this specific thing, whatever it is that channel kind of brings forward. They're radiating that out to the world all the time. But then when the other person is in their energy, they also radiate that out. And so when this happens, sometimes there can be a power struggle between these two things. And you have to just be aware of that and know what's happening and know that the person who has the full channel all the time really should probably lead in that space when it comes to the two of you. So these are just examples of different things that you can start to pull from this connection chart. It's super fun. It's super interesting, but I want you to stop because I already know what you're doing. You are sitting there going, oh, I want to know all that stuff. I want to know what all of that is. You're already starting to shift the focus away from you and to the third party, or to, I want to know that about my spouse, or whatever that is. So come back to me. We don't get to skip steps here because it can actually cause more harm than good. So yes, I gave you some teasers. I gave you some things that maybe some people who are listening are ready for that. Like they feel like they have truly mastered their own human design. They feel like they have a really solid foundation of their partner's human design. And maybe it is time to start looking at those connection charts. But if you don't have those first two pieces, then we're going to have to hold off on that. Well, you don't have to, but it's just really probably going to, like I said, cause more harm than good because you're trying to skip to something that you're just not quite ready for. So if you want to work on your relationship, whatever, regardless of what relationship that is, significant other, kids, family, business partners, coaching clients, then it's imperative that you start the process with the understanding of you. And then we can start to pull in the other pieces because you need to be the most important person in your life. That is the number one way that you are going to create transformation in your life and the lives of others. I'm going to repeat that. You being the most important person in your life and having a deep understanding of you is the number one way that you're going to create transformation in your own life and in the lives of the people around you. So if you go on and ignore yourself, ignore the things about you, and you're so fixated on learning everything about everybody else, you're not doing nearly as much good, and you will not transform nearly as much as you possibly could if you understood you first. Okay. So where do you start? One, if you're brand new to human design, make sure you grab the chart, the free chart from the website. It'll give you a free ebook that you can start to understand your different type. Book your free mini session. They're complimentary. It's right on the website, or you can use the link that is in the show notes here. So book that. And then we'll talk about where to go from there. You don't need to get all of the answers right now. You just need to just take that next step. So regardless of where you are in your human design process, take those 2 steps. If you've already gotten a chart from the website, perfect. Book your complimentary mini session, and we will talk about where you are in this process and what is the appropriate steps forward for you to take. So that is where you can absolutely start this process. But just know as you walk out of here that it's just a really fun thing to understand. Like, okay, there's multiple things at play within our relationships, which is why they can be so difficult and why they can be so fun and why it's so important that we understand all of the dynamics at play so that we can make the most out of each and every relationship that we have in our lives. So until next time, walk your talk, speak your truth, choose courage over comfort, and never, ever give up.